All right. We are here in our new space in East Philadelphia once again. Cold winter afternoon on Ropeadope TV. And we have, again, even more special guests. Mr. Adrian Harpham.
All right.
And Jack Snyder, a.k.a. Leyeux, who challenges me on my French accent every time, I must say that. We've had some conversations where I had to train the staff on how to say the band name over and over again. We've got fruit flies in November. You see that?
Or some dust.
Fruit fly, just, yeah.
You might be some couch
flying
dust.
around. We carried them from the old place. Thanks for being here, fellas.
It's great to be here.
It's been a good afternoon. We've had some lively conversation already. Should we start with politics?
Oh.
No, we'll ease into that.
Yeah.
We'll do that a little later. Adrian, you want to talk a little bit first about modern icon recordings? I want to see if we can.
Well, Lewis was kind enough to come up with this idea of this imprint, modern icon recordings within the Ropeadope, from conversations we had last year, and we followed through with it. And
it was my idea.
It was your idea, yeah.
I don't remember that.
Well, I think, but the initial.
Just kidding.
The initial the inception of it was, or I think the phrase that came out that brought about that was, if we could bring some of these classic, iconic or legendary artists that I've gotten to work with or know personally, if we could make fresh records on them, new records on them. And then the flip side was like, if we could make records with emerging young artists that will stand the test of time and be timeless and solid, like not flash in the pan, not like cool and not cool next year. Then the idea for the imprint came, and then we did it. And
nice. So for history, I mean, and everybody can read bios, but they're always pretty dry. So what's your trajectory that puts you in this position where you have this knowledge and all these connections to even have a vision of that scope?
Well, 27 years professional drummer, and within that career as a drummer, I got to play with all kinds of different people and all kinds of different styles, but there was a certain point where I got to play with Leo Nostelli, I got to play with Melvin Sparks, Reuben Wilson, the organist, did a record with Reuben Wilson.
Wow.
Through Leo, met Henry Butler, been playing with Henry Butler the past 6-7 years. Through Henry Butler, got to go record with Dr. John,
Wow. So coincidentally.
Yeah.
Flip it.
Dr. John, right there.
There it is.
There he is. Yeah.
Classic that's been in my collection for 5 years.
That's iconic.
There you go.
But to finish that real quickly, and then also through Leo, there was this project called Icons of Funk, which had Bernie Worrell, Fred Wesley, Leo, and his bass player Bill Dickens, and I. And when I wouldn't do it, Stan Moore would do it. But it was, I did a bunch of stuff with that band, and it just got to where I had somehow interfaced with all these legendary characters, old heads that, got to kind of school me and put a different imprint in me musically. But as well, always be at the vanguard with the new people as well, the entire time of my career. So it's like, I always want to stay relevant. I hate saying that, but I always, you always want to stay completely on top of what's going on, and then, your version of it. But then I love the historical side of it too, and have total respect for it, And so it's always in everything that I've been trying to do is like merge old and new, and future, So current.
Because you kind of see the history, right? You feel like you can see the thread.
Yeah.
That's the important value.
Absolutely.
And now, how do you stay current? And how did you and Jack do?
Well, we met through.
He's one of the new.
What's that?
He's one of the new.
Absolutely.
And classics that you're referring to.
Thank you. I'll take it.
he discussed in the earlier interview that we both know this guy, Brockett Parsons, who was a keyboard player who played with Lady Gaga the past 8 years.
And you guys knew each other?
We knew each other from back in the day. We played with Tavares together, and we were in Boston at the same time, and saw each other through all kinds of changes. And I had been getting into producing, and I made a couple of my own records. So I was producing other artists, and I made solo records and was developing a sound, developing skills within that. And I sent him my record, and he never responded about it. But when he met Jack on his trips up to Vermont, he, for some reason, played Jack my solo record and said, "You should work with this guy." And so to me, that's a kind of divine,
I love it,
intervention.
I love it.
Somehow, because it's like that record was kind of rock, you know, and it's like, and Jack was 15 or 16 at the time, so it was like very embryonic emergence of first bands and things like that, you know. So it's like
15.
So it's like, how would you know from seeing this talented kid that he should work with it? The two sounds aren't quite, you know what I'm saying? It's like it's all potential. So he somehow got it that maybe he should know him, and then we managed to get in touch. Well, he got in touch with me within a month of that or something like that.
The role of connection, you know, and it's funny, we've talked a lot today about, or a little bit today about value. Jack, you mentioned, you know, some of the. What was the lyric that we were just talking about? The lyric about appetite.
Greed being in the diet, the human diet.
Greed started in our diet, right?
Yeah.
And so that, you know, you talked a little bit about. It's just some of the issues and the, you know, reflecting on the world, and I'm going somewhere with this. I really am. It's in there somewhere. I've been reflecting a little bit on, as we move forward as a label and all the things that we do and why are we so different. And I think what's emerging in the world now is a bit of just a reflection on what are the real values. You know, the past, the 20th century, everything was distilled down to the value of the dollar. And now we're going back and looking at what are the real values. What, you know, it's not how much do you make, how good is your job, how do you spend your time, these kinds of things. And as I get older and face the inevitable, you start to think about what's the value of my time. You know,
Yeah.
so if you broaden the sense of your value system, a lot of things open up. And one of those things is, what is the value of connection? And I've built this everything that's happening here at Ropeadope and Modern Icon now, it's all about the value of connection with humans around a certain subject, which happens to be music. That's what leads to those things. Do you ever see this, the Jimmy Iovine, Dr. Dre, docu-series or promotional Dr. Dre video?
I'm interested.
That's really long. I can't remember, and I just dissed it, but it's good. But they focus on Jimmy back in the day when he connected Patti Smith with Bruce Springsteen. It was just all over a song. It's like, so you got this song, they're not going to use this song. You know, it'd be really cool if Patti...
Because
there's this song, you should sing this song. And he did the same thing again with Stop Dragging My Heart Around with Stevie Nicks. So like that was like a leftover song. It's like, you know, you guys should do this. So I definitely hear you loud and clear on the power of connection. I think it's one of the values that seems to have been lost in our culture, and especially in the music business. The idea that everybody is distinct and separate breeds competition and mistrust. And that only serves certain people. So,
the idea might be lost, but it still happens. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's
how random was that?
Yeah.
It's like I could be sitting there in my apartment back then, like 6 years ago, and be jaded and lost, the ideas lost, but then this call comes through, and it's Jack, 15 or 16 years old, you know, so we end up doing all his early recordings together, and then...
So how are you in a situation at 15 or 16 years old where you're connecting with this gentleman and...
Yeah, it was totally through, it was pretty random,
Yeah.
or it felt pretty random. I was playing in my small town in Vermont, and...
They're all small towns there. But...
Yeah. Yeah, and Brockett he's been dating a girl from my hometown.
Yeah.
So it was just a random connection, and we invited him over and played some music, and ended up recording a couple of songs with Adrian that weren't my songs. They were another friend of mine's songs who I'd been playing with, and we produced those. Adrian produced those songs, and then I started writing. I was playing as a drummer and singing
at
those
15.
songs.
Yeah.
I was 16 when we met, and then later we started working on my songs. I was starting to write, and so we just kind of kept the ball rolling.
Yeah, like the other guy, I think the other guy's family kind of interfered, and so then it just became me and Jack. It got narrowed down to not
just
the songwriter guy, Jack and me. Now it's just me and Jack. But I was kind of happy because that's in those initial sessions. That was I was attracted to what he was doing. You know, it was clear that's a big talent right there. We vibed in the studio. You know, you can see right off the bat when you put each other at ease, and more magical things can happen. It's more loose, you know.
You guys strike me as sort of abstract mad scientists that get into the studio and just start
Absolutely
being like, what is this? You know, what does this knob do? And why don't we try that?
I think fearlessness and playfulness is like, and it felt so comfortable too because we were like in his apartment.
Yeah,
and
it's a lab.
Gotcha.
I think when some people go into a studio and it's like, oh no, there's like a different pressure.
It feels important.
Yeah, it feels important, especially
too important. Yes. Yeah.
If you're focusing on like money that you're spending like on a clock, rather than just playing with sounds, playing with ideas, and he's totally open to all that. Totally welcoming to all of that. So
it's like I figured out from. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Sorry, I love it. Go ahead.
When you have a studio, when you have a lab, you figure out quick into the game, if you're being observant, that what happens when it's just like you're in the living room and I don't give a shit, you know, like it. As opposed to I'm in the studio. This is $50 an hour. I better sing really good.
Yeah.
You know, you can hear it immediately.
The constraints start to come in.
Yeah.
What you're expecting from something, right?
It comes through the recording, and people who hear it know it's not special. They don't know why they don't like it, but they can hear it. You know, the average person can hear it, and then they can also hear when it's magical. You know,
that's amazing. I mean, I'm pretty, and you're helping me define some of the things that have happened for us at Ropeadope in recent years. I mean, I've always liked to try new things, try anything, that kind of mentality. But leaving something open and taking the money and all of the expectations out of it seems to be the gateway to a much wider range of creativity and things that can happen. I mean, this space right here, you know the line, right? If you had told me 2 years ago that we'd be sitting here in a train station with a bunch of rugs and used furniture doing a TV show, I would have been like, what? What's the purpose in that? Well, it doesn't really even have a purpose. You're just kind of doing it, right? And that's probably, to me, I love my politics, so I'm going to say that's like the most damning evidence against the system of capitalism that you can have, right? It doesn't lead anywhere forward.
Yeah.
Because it defines everything I mean, capitalism in and of itself. Why am I so political today? I'm just hammered on it. It's probably
it's all related.
The government's fault.
Yeah.
Just blame it on the government. I forgot what I was saying. No, at its core, capitalism is basically like a system of attaching a value.
Yeah.
It's an organizational system.
Yeah.
And it seems so completely opposed to the creative process in that sense. So, there you go.
That's kind of why, like, I get more gear for my studio or whatever. I upgrade stuff. I add more software, this or that. But I'm not overly concerned with pimping it out to the point of where I'm competing with all the big studios in New York.
Because then you have to
yeah.
do a certain thing, right?
Then it becomes about people coming to my place because of the gear rather than for me.
Ah, there you go.
And so I want it to be not about gear at all. I want it to be a lab where some really different stuff happens. Because New York is so expensive that you can hear it on a lot of the records that come out of New York. That financial pressure, and it makes a lot of the stuff sound safe, and that's bad. And to me, music that's attractive, even now, is more dangerous.
Interesting.
A Kelly Clarkson, like a straight up pop record. Obviously, that's somewhat safe and it's aimed at the masses. But there's lots of records that get massive notoriety, like Kendrick Lamar, Butterfly, that you can absolutely hear that is made in a state of experimentation and spontaneity. You can hear it,
Do you know what they do?
What are they? Well, I've read about it, but
they go and they'll rent out a house somewhere, like possibly a foreclosure even, and then they build a studio inside the house.
Kendrick.
Yeah.
Because he knows.
Top Dog.
Yeah.
Terrace. They'll go in, they'll just build the stereo inside the house.
Yeah.
And they all stay there, make the record. And then they take the studio out, and the lease is up. And they go find another house. The second time I met Terrace, he's like, hop in the car, we're going up in the valley. And we went to a place, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, we're checking this out. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And
they know what's up.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
They know what's up, Absolutely.
Wow. So where is the balance? So like in what you do and what you do, considering that at one end there's that overdone thing, but at the other end is somebody who really doesn't know how to do what they're doing with some crappy equipment, which could be right here. Like where's the good spot? Like how good do you have to be? I guess is the question. Is that the question? Or how lo-fi is too lo-fi?
There's no such thing as too lo-fi, because I mean you put on Muddy Waters like I forget the name of that tune, but it's basically like one mic and like his foot and tapping on the guitar, like
or John Lee Hooker,
and you get chills when you hear that,
There you go.
So it's all about the soul.
But that's a while ago. What about in today's world where a lot of people are just making stuff at home?
I think it's like it's a matter of like identifying what your objective or priority is. Like, is your priority to meet the expectation of the masses and like kind of create something that people will listen to or like will play on radio? Like that's one thing. But creating something that's really authentic, that's just a matter of cultivating good vibe.
It's intent. It's if it's really
intent.
high. If the intent is like on steroids times 5,000. Like the artist really knows what they're doing and their talent is just blazing. It doesn't matter if it's lo-fi or hi-fi. That's completely arbitrary. It's just a matter of how that intent is coming across.
How you're communicating it.
Yeah.
The feeling of it.
And whether you're successful in like creating a following or like that's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
That could be about a whole bunch of other logistical stuff,
Well, I mean, isn't an art? Aren't musicians primarily? I mean, if there's nobody to put it out to, does it need? Isn't that a driver? Like, and isn't that a shaper of music? Like the expectation of where it's going to be played and who you're going to be reaching. Isn't that present in the process?
Well, this record we made completely free of, in a state of total freedom and rebellion and whatever. But it was absolutely intended to be attractive,
right,
to people. So, but we just didn't. Like, I didn't rein him in from his stuff, or he didn't rein me in from my ideas. It was like, they won't like that. There was never that phrase never came in. We might say, this is gratuitous keyboard part, let's get rid of this, or that. We don't need that extra harmony or that.
Yeah, I think it's just
trim away some of the things. But
making it something that you like.
Yeah.
And if your tastes are, if we just have an awareness, like just people just generally have an awareness of what. You're just aware of what other people like and dislike and what you like and dislike. And so you're kind of always making decisions, like little decisions that that lead it in a certain direction. Hopefully to something that you like.
Yeah, there's a social part too. Right? It's there. It just doesn't need to be
spoken,
present, and in the front at any moment while you're doing the process.
There should be
somewhere in there.
There should be no constraints or anything in the way of anything at all when you're recording or writing. It's like you're talking about Dylan. It's like Dylan when he wrote Just Like a Woman or maybe like a Rolling Stone. There was like 25 pages of it initially, and then he kept scrapping different pages. It got down to where it's like 2 or 3 pages.
He took away everything that wasn't a great song.
Yeah, but he didn't stop himself as he was writing it. It was just like, and that's my attitude. That's both of our attitude towards recording. It's just like no inhibitions, nothing, But then, then savvy and intuition and a sense of what you think is right comes in and pares it down a bit. And if we both get turned on by it, and we're being really honest with ourselves
and each other,
it's gotta resonate with you, and you know what I'm saying? Like, there is a oneness. Does that make sense?
We'll play it back, just to make sure. But I have a sense of it. It's interesting to dig into these things, to understand the process and make sense of what's happening. I think we're at a really interesting time where the story of how this happens and how things are created it's kind of like the new vinyl cover, like you were saying. It's really not something that people understand. So any level of digging into it and trying to explain it is, to me, helpful and interesting, and I think for the audience as well.
There's another footnote. When Light Blue Movers, I'm in the band Light Blue Movers and produced that record. When Darren and I, the keyboard player, decided to bring in guest vocalists, he was, there we go, Jack was the first artist I produced from earlier that I asked about being a guest artist. And he was 18 at the time, and basically sent him the file of Darren and I's writing demo, and he sent us back Serenity.
Serenity, right?
And Serenity ended up being the first kind of pre-release for the Light Blue Movers thing, remember, on the compilation. And then from her, because he and I we weren't really working together for a while at that point. And a year and a half later, he came back and said, I want to do another recording, because he had heard the direction I was going in on the Light Blue Mover stuff. And that track specifically is like, oh, okay, I can see where you're headed. I'm headed that way too. So, I don't know, that links it all.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. It's cool to see and get some little glimpse into how you two motivate and inspire each other and work together. And looking forward, I think we're pretty close on time here, so we're going to put in the credits, of course, where people can listen to your record and where people can keep up with Modern Icon and listen to Light Blue Movers. You want to say anything about what's coming up for the future?
More music, definitely.
Yeah.
Keep tinkering.
Absolutely. What's that?
Keep tinkering and tweaking and being mad scientists.
Play the studio like an instrument, you know. But I think we'll work on more music and maybe go more stripped down, you know, or combine the crazy stuff with the stripped down stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, just kind of, I don't refine it and get even more subtle, you know. Hopefully more shows. You know.
So you're still like in the studio whenever you visit him and just.
Yeah, we usually.
Yeah.
We'll do some maybe later today.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like tonight we're gonna go.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's really cool. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Great to see you.
Yeah.
Modern Icon Recordings, Leyeux, Ropeadope. Stay tuned.